It was a cold winter morning, the kind where the air feels heavy and each breath comes out as a cloud of white mist. The city was still waking up, but the hospital was already alive with movement. Nurses hurried in and out. Doctors in white coats walked with quick steps, and the smell of antiseptic hung in the air just outside the big metal gates. A small figure sat on the pavement, curled up with his knees to his chest. His clothes were worn out and far too thin for the weather. His shoes had holes in them, and his hands were tucked under his arms for warmth. Dr. Adrian Wells had just parked his car. He was one of the most respected surgeons in the city. Known for saving lives even in the most complicated cases, that morning he had brought his daughter Emily along. Emily had never walked in her life. She had been born with a rare condition that left her legs weak and unresponsive. Adrian had tried everything: surgeries, expensive treatments, the best therapists, but nothing had worked. Emily sat in her wheelchair beside her father as he locked the car. She noticed the boy by the gate before her father did. He was drawing something in the dirt with a broken stick. His fingers were red from the cold, but his movements were quick and sure. As they came closer, Emily tilted her head, curious. She couldn't quite see what he was making until her chair rolled near enough. It wasn't just random shapes. He was sketching a human figure, complete with muscles and bones. The boy looked up. His eyes were sharp and full of life, even though his face was thin from hunger. Without any hesitation, he said in a steady voice, "I can help her walk." The words hung in the air for a moment. Dr. Wells blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. A nurse passing by glanced at the boy and scoffed. People walking in and out of the hospital gave him quick looks, some pitying, some annoyed. Adrian frowned. "What did you say?" The boy stood, brushing the dirt off his hands. "I said I can help her walk," he repeated. His tone was not boastful, but certain, as if it was simply a fact. Emily's eyes widened. She didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She just looked at him with quiet interest. The boy introduced himself. "My name's Marcus." His voice was calm, though there was a slight shiver from the cold. He explained that he had lived on the streets for years. He didn't have a family. He slept wherever he could find shelter. Sometimes he went hungry for days, but when he noticed Emily, something in him made him speak. Adrian's first thought was that this was nonsense. He was a surgeon, and even he hadn't been able to make his daughter walk. How could a homeless boy possibly do it? But before he could say anything, Emily asked softly, "How would you help me?" Marcus crouched down so he was at her eye level. "I've learned something," he said. "Old ways. Not from books, not from hospitals. Someone taught me how to wake up the legs, even when doctors say it's not possible." A cold breeze cut through the moment, making Emily pull her coat tighter. Adrian wanted to push the wheelchair forward and leave, but Emily's hand held the armrest tightly, stopping him. She didn't know why, but she wanted to hear more. There was no arrogance in Marcus's voice, no begging, no attempt to ask for money, only a strange kind of quiet confidence. Nearby, a security guard began walking toward them, eyeing Marcus with suspicion. The hospital didn't usually allow loitering near the entrance. Marcus glanced at the guard, and then back at Emily. "I don't need your money," he said quickly. "Just give me a chance." Adrian sighed, part of him wanting to end the conversation. But another part, perhaps the tired, hopeless part of him, was curious despite himself. Emily tilted her head. "Did you help someone else walk before?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Yes, but not here. Not in this city." He didn't give many details, but there was something in his eyes, a memory, maybe even pain, that made him look older than his years. By now, people walking past had started to whisper. Some laughed quietly, thinking it was ridiculous. Others shook their heads, assuming Marcus was just trying to get attention. But Emily didn't care. She was used to people doubting. She had lived her whole life with people saying It's impossible. Dr. Wells finally spoke again. Even if I believed you, why are you here at this hospital gate? Marcus shrugged, because sometimes the right people walk by. He said simply, his gaze didn't waver. Emily smiled a little, and for the first time in weeks, there was a spark of hope in her eyes. The guard reached them and told Marcus to move along. But before leaving, Marcus leaned toward Emily. If you want to try, I'll be here tomorrow. Same time, he said. Then, without another word, he walked away. Disappearing into the crowd beyond the gate, Adrian pushed Emily toward the hospital entrance, but he could feel her watching where Marcus had gone. She didn't speak, but he knew she was thinking about him. As they rolled inside, Adrian tried to shake off the encounter. He told himself it was nonsense, a distraction, but deep down, a tiny, uninvited thought had already taken root. What if the boy was telling the truth? That night, as Emily sat by her bedroom window, she replayed the scene in her head. She could still hear Marcus's voice, calm and certain. She could still see the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with belief, and belief was something she had almost forgotten existed. The next morning came with a pale sun. Its light, soft but cold. The streets outside the hospital were wet from the light rain during the night. Emily woke up earlier than usual. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: anticipation. It wasn't about the hospital or another test. It was about the boy she had met the day before. Marcus. She couldn't get his words out of her head. Her father, Dr. Wells, was busy reading his morning emails while drinking coffee. He noticed Emily staring out the window. "You're quiet today?" he said. Emily didn't answer directly. She only asked, "Are we going to the hospital again this morning?" Her father looked up from his phone. "We have an appointment?" "Yes." She tried to keep her voice steady when she replied, "Good," when they arrived at the hospital. Emily's eyes immediately went to the gate, and there he was, Marcus. Sitting in the same spot, his clothes were still worn and thin, but he looked as if he had been waiting for hours. When he saw Emily, he stood quickly. His face brightened, and he gave a small wave. Dr. Wells sighed quietly. "Emily, don't get your hopes up," but Emily didn't listen. Marcus came closer. Carrying a small cloth bundle in his hands, he greeted her with a warm smile. "You came back," he said softly. Emily nodded. "You said you would be here." The cloth bundle in his hands was opened to reveal something unexpected: not food, not money, but a small, worn notebook. The pages were filled with neat, careful sketches, human skeletons, muscle diagrams, and strange symbols. Emily leaned forward, fascinated. Marcus explained. "This is what I learned from the man who took me in for a while," he began to tell. His story: he had been living on the streets since he was 8 years old. His mother had died, and his father had left long before that, for years. He had wandered from one city to another, stealing food when he had to, sleeping in alleys. Until one day, he collapsed in the middle of a small town market. An old man, with skin dark and wrinkled like weathered leather, found him and took him in. The old man was not a doctor, but he was known in his village for something almost magical. People came to him when doctors gave up. Marcus didn't understand it at first, but he watched and learned. The old man taught him how to feel for life and the muscles, how to find points on the body that could wake sleeping nerves. Marcus remembered how the man's hands moved slow, gentle, but sure. For 2 years, Marcus stayed with him. He saw people walk again after years of being unable to stand. He saw pain vanish after a few sessions. It was not always successful, but when it worked, it felt like a miracle. Then one winter, the old man passed away. Marcus was left alone again. But he carried the knowledge in his head. Emily listened with wide eyes. She had heard many medical stories from her father, but this was different. It wasn't filled with complicated words or machines. It was about touch, patience, and belief. She could feel the sincerity in Marcus's voice. Dr. Wells remained skeptical. If this is true, Why didn't you work in a clinic or with a therapist?" Marcus gave a small shrug. "People don't believe a boy from the street. They think I'm lying. They think I'm just trying to get money." His gaze lowered for a moment. "So I stopped trying to convince them." Emily didn't hesitate. "You can try with me," she said firmly. Her father turned to her, "Emily," but she cut him off. "I've been in a wheelchair all my life. Dad, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, I'm still the same. But what if it does?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I can't promise you'll walk, but I can promise I'll try, like it's my own life on the line." His words were steady, not dramatic, and that made them even more powerful. Before Dr. Wells could respond, a cold gust of wind swept through the gate, making Emily shiver. Marcus looked at her hands. "You're cold," he said. "We should do the first thing inside. Somewhere warm." But Dr. Wells shook his head. "You're not coming into the hospital without permission." Marcus didn't argue. He only nodded and stepped back. "Then meet me somewhere safe," he said. "You choose the place." His calmness was strange. It made him seem older than he looked. Emily glanced at her father with pleading eyes. "Please, Dad," she whispered. Adrian looked at his daughter for a long moment, torn between logic and the hope in her eyes. He finally sighed. "We'll see." Marcus didn't press further. He closed his notebook and stepped away, disappearing into the flow of people once more. But before he left completely, he turned back and said, "Tomorrow, I'll be here again. Bring no money, just bring your trust." That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about his story. She imagined the old man teaching him, the patient standing after years of sitting, and his steady, quiet voice promising nothing except effort. It was a different kind of hope when she hadn't felt from doctors or hospitals in her heart. She was already sure she would meet him again, even if her father didn't believe yet. She did, and sometimes belief was the first step to any miracle. The next day, the sky was heavy with clouds, and a slow drizzle covered the streets in a thin sheet of silver. Dr. Wells was unusually quiet during breakfast. He had heard Emily talk in her sleep the night before. She had been saying Marcus's name, as if dreaming about their meeting that worried him. He didn't want his daughter to get her hopes up, only to face disappointment again. Emily, however, was brighter than she had been in months. She asked when they would leave for the hospital. She didn't directly say it, but both of them knew she was eager to see Marcus. Her father took a sip of his coffee and finally said, "We might not see him today. He's probably not serious." But even as he spoke, he knew he would drive by the gate just to check. When they arrived, Marcus was there, just as he promised. He was leaning against the fence, the drizzle making his hair stick to his forehead, but he didn't seem to mind. His clothes looked even wetter than the day before, and Dr. Wells wondered how long the boy had been standing there. Emily's eyes lit up. "You came," she said softly. Marcus smiled. "I said I would." This time, Marcus didn't waste words. He asked if they had decided. Dr. Wells hesitated. "I still don't believe you can do anything for her. Her condition is not simple. It's something she's had since birth. I've seen her x-rays, her MRI scans, her muscle tests. Nothing works." Marcus listened patiently, his eyes calm. Then he said, "Maybe you've seen everything the machines can show, but not what the hands can feel." Adrian's jaw tightened. He had worked for years in hospitals where facts and proof mattered. He didn't trust guesses or feelings when it came to health, but something about Marcus's steady voice made it hard to simply dismiss him. "Tell me exactly what you think you can do," he said. Marcus crouched near Emily's wheelchair, not touching her, but looking at her legs as if studying them. "I want to see how her feet react to certain points on her legs and back. I want to find out if the nerves are completely asleep or just ignored for too long." Dr. Wells gave a short laugh. "We've done nerve tests 100 times. She has permanent damage. This isn't something you can wake up like a sleeping." Cat Emily looked at her father, her expression firm. "Dad, I want to try, please." It was a sentence Adrian had heard before, over the years. She had asked to try many different treatments. Some were strange therapies, some were herbal remedies, all ending in disappointment. But the way she said it now was different. Her voice wasn't desperate, was certain, as if she believed in Marcus more than she feared another failure. Adrian exhaled slowly. "If I let you try, it will be under my supervision, and if I think for a second you're hurting her, I'll stop it immediately." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Fair," he said. They agreed to meet that afternoon in the Wells family's backyard, away from curious eyes. Adrian still didn't want hospital staff gossiping about his daughter's street therapy. When the time came, Marcus arrived with his small bundle. And that same worn notebook, he knelt beside Emily's wheelchair, speaking to her gently. "I'll need you to tell me exactly what you feel, even if it's nothing." Emily nodded, looking both nervous and excited. Marcus began by pressing his fingers lightly on different parts of her legs. He wasn't rough, but he wasn't timid either. Every movement seemed to have a purpose. Adrian stood nearby, arms crossed, watching closely. He noticed that Marcus's hands didn't shake. His eyes stayed focused, as if he was tracing an invisible map only he could see. After a few minutes, Marcus pressed a point just above Emily's ankle. "Do you feel anything here?" he asked. Emily shook her head. He moved higher, pressing near her knee. "What about now?" She frowned. "It's stare warm," she said slowly. Marcus gave a small nod. "Good. That means something is still alive in there." Adrian felt a strange twist in his chest. It could just be imagination, he told himself. Sometimes people felt sensations because they wanted to, but the steady way Marcus worked made it harder to dismiss. Marcus then moved to her lower back. Pressing along her spine, Emily gasped. "That tickles." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's even better." The first session lasted less than 20 minutes. Marcus stopped before Emily got too tired. He stood and looked at Adrian. "I don't expect you to believe me yet, but I know what I felt." Her body hasn't completely given up. Adrian didn't reply right away. He glanced at his daughter, who looked different, not physically, but in her eyes there was light there, a kind of spark he hadn't seen in years. Marcus picked up his bundle. "I'll come again tomorrow, same time," he said before walking away into the drizzle. When the gate closed behind him, Emily turned to her father. "You felt it too, didn't you?" she asked. Adrian looked at her, hesitating. Finally, he said, "I felt curious," and that was the first time in years he hadn't said "It's impossible" that night. Adrian couldn't stop thinking about what Marcus had said about nerves being asleep, about what the hands could feel. For the first time, he caught himself wondering, what if I'd been wrong? The following day, the weather was brighter. Sunlight spilling across the quiet street outside the Wells home. Emily was already in the backyard. Waiting in her wheelchair, she had barely slept all night. The excitement buzzing inside her. Her father, Dr. Wells, had agreed reluctantly that Marcus could try another session. But only under his watchful eyes, Marcus arrived on time. Carrying the same small cloth bundle, his clothes were still worn, but this time he looked a little cleaner, as if he had made an effort. Emily greeted him with a smile. "You're here," she said. He nodded. "I said I'd keep coming." He glanced toward Dr. Wells, who was standing by the sliding door with his arms folded. Marcus gave him a polite nod. "I'll explain everything I do." Marcus knelt beside Emily again, opening his bundle. Inside were a few folded towels, a small bowl, and a bottle of warm water. He poured some water over his hands before touching her legs. "Cold muscles are harder to wake," he explained. "We warm them first." He pressed the warm towel over her calves, gently rubbing in small circles. Emily's face relaxed. "That feels nice," she murmured. He then began working on her feet, pressing and stretching each toe, one by one. "Tell me if you feel anything different," he said. Emily focused hard. "It's tingly," she whispered after a while. Marcus gave a small smile. "That's good. It means something is responding." Dr. Wells shifted uncomfortably. He wanted to dismiss it, but he couldn't ignore the way Emily's reactions seemed genuine. Marcus moved to her knees, using his thumbs to apply gentle pressure to certain points. Emily winced. "It's not pain." "More like a strange pulling," Marcus nodded. "Your muscles have been asleep for too long. We're reminding them they exist." Emily giggled softly at his words. The sound made her father glance at her, surprised. It had been a long time since therapy made her laugh, most of the time. Her sessions with professionals were filled with frustration and silence. Marcus's hands moved with confidence, almost like a musician playing an instrument he knew by heart. Every press and movement seemed to follow an invisible pattern. "The old man who taught me," Marcus said quietly, "told me to always listen to the body. Not the person's words, not even their face, just the muscles. They tell you the truth." Emily's curiosity grew. "Did you help a lot of people?" Marcus paused for a moment. "Not many. I didn't have the chance. Most didn't trust me. Some laughed, others thought I was pretending. But the few I did help, they're walking now." Dr. Wells couldn't help but ask, "How do I know you're not just giving her false hope?" Marcus looked him straight in the eye. "You don't? Not yet. But I'm not asking you to believe in me. I'm asking you to watch her. Watch the small changes. That's where the truth is." After about 20 minutes, Marcus stopped. "That's enough for today. Too much at once will tire her out." Emily looked disappointed. "Already?" Marcus smiled. "Healing is like planting seeds. You water them a little every day. You don't flood the soil all at once." Dr. Wells noticed that Emily's cheeks were flushed, not from exhaustion, but from energy. She looked alive. Marcus packed his things, but before leaving, he handed Emily a small paper folded in half. "Do these small movements every morning and night," he said. "It will keep the muscles listening." Emily unfolded it to see simple sketches of leg stretches and ankle rotations drawn in the same careful style as his notebook. When Marcus left, Emily practiced the movements right there in the backyard. Dr. Wells watched silently. His medical mind told him these small exercises wouldn't change anything, but his eyes told him his daughter was moving her legs more willingly than usual. It was subtle, but it was there. Later that evening, Emily couldn't stop talking about the session, Dad, when he pressed near my spine. It was like something switched on in my legs. It's strange. I can't explain it. But it's real. Adrian listened, not knowing what to say. A part of him still clung to science, but another part was starting to quietly wonder if he had been wrong to dismiss Marcus so quickly. That night, as Emily slept, Adrian sat at his desk. He opened her old medical files, staring at years of failed treatments, expensive surgeries, and therapy notes that always ended with no improvement. He closed the folder and sat back, hearing Marcus's words in his head. Watch the small changes. The next morning, when Emily asked if Marcus could come again, Adrian didn't hesitate this time. He simply said, "Yes," and Emily's face lit up like the morning sun. The next few days passed with a steady rhythm. Every afternoon, Marcus would arrive at the Wells' backyard, carrying his small bundle. Emily would already be waiting in her wheelchair, eager to begin. The winter air was sharp, but Marcus always started the sessions by warming her legs with towels and rubbing them gently until her skin felt alive beneath his hands. That afternoon, Marcus seemed quieter than usual. Emily noticed it right away. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. He gave a small smile. "I'm thinking about the man who taught me, and how he used to say the body is like a locked door. The right touch is the key." Dr. Wells stood nearby. listening. He had stopped crossing his arms during the sessions. Now he simply observed in silence. He had begun to notice small differences, tiny twitches in Emily's toes. Slight changes in the way her legs responded when Marcus pressed certain points. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there, and it was making it harder for him to ignore. Marcus began the session by working higher up Emily's legs than before. His fingers pressed along the muscles with slow, deliberate pressure. Emily closed, her eyes concentrating on every sensation. "It's like there's a spark," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "That's your nerves waking up. They've been asleep for years, but they remember." He moved to her lower back, pressing. With his thumbs, Emily gasped. "It's warm. Like heat moving down my legs." Marcus looked over at Dr. Wells. "That's what I'm talking about." Adrian didn't reply, but his eyes stayed locked on Emily's face, studying her expression. After a while, Marcus stopped and said, "We need to try something new today. It might be a little uncomfortable, but it's important." Emily agreed immediately, without hesitation. Marcus positioned her chair so her legs could dangle freely. He asked her to try lifting one foot, even a little. Emily's brow furrowed in concentration. Her muscles trembled, her toes twitched. And for a split second, her foot shifted upward. Before dropping back down, Emily gasped. "Did you see that?" She said in disbelief. Marcus's eyes lit up. "Yes, I did." He turned to Dr. Wells. "You saw it too." Adrian's heart gave a strange jump. He had seen it small, almost nothing, but undeniably real. They didn't push further that day. Marcus explained that the body needed time to adjust to each new signal. If we rush, we risk making the muscles shut down again. He said Emily understood, but her excitement was hard to contain after Marcus left. Emily kept talking about that tiny movement. "It wasn't much, but it was mine." She told her father, "I've never done that before. Not even by accident." Adrian didn't say much. But deep inside, something had shifted. That night, while Emily slept, Adrian sat alone in the living room. He thought about all the treatments he had trusted in the past: machines, drugs, surgeries, yet none had given his daughter even that small foot movement. And now, a homeless boy with no medical degree had done it in less than a week. It didn't make sense, but he couldn't deny what he had seen the next day. Marcus arrived carrying not just his usual bundle, but also a small wooden stick carved with patterns, Emily's. Eyes widened. "What's that for?" she asked. Marcus grinned. "This was my teacher's. He called it a walking stick. But not for walking, it's for guiding energy." He placed it gently on her lap. "One day, you'll walk with this. Not because you need it, but because it will remind you of the first step." Dr. Wells felt a strange tightness in his chest watching that moment. Marcus had a way of speaking that didn't sound like empty promises. It sounded like truth waiting to happen. The session that day focused on longer holds and deeper pressure. Emily winced sometimes, but she never asked him to stop. Pain means the nerves are listening, Marcus explained. As long as it's not sharp pain, it's a good sign. By the end of the session, Emily could hold her foot up for almost 2 seconds before it dropped. It wasn't walking yet, but it was progress. When Marcus left that evening, Adrian walked him to the gate. For the first time, his voice softened. "I don't know what you're doing, but thank you." Marcus shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. Save it for the day she takes her first step." That night, Emily held the carved stick close as she fell asleep, her mind full of dreams where she stood, walked, and even ran. For the first time in her life, those dreams didn't feel impossible. They felt like they were waiting just around the corner. The morning was crisp, with a light fog curling around the edges of the Wells' backyard. Emily was already awake and ready before Marcus arrived. She had been practicing the small movements he'd shown, her lifting her foot, wiggling her Toes rotating her ankles. They were tiny steps, but to her, they felt like the beginning of something big. When Marcus walked in through the side gate, he carried the same small bundle and that carved walking stick. Emily grinned the moment she saw him. "I've been practicing," she said proudly. Marcus's eyes lit up. "Good. That makes today even better, Doctor." Wells stood in the corner of the yard, coffee in hand, watching them closely as he always did, though lately there was less suspicion in his eyes and more quiet curiosity. Marcus began the session the way he always did, warming Emily's legs with the towels, rubbing slowly to bring the blood flow up. Muscles need warmth like seeds need sunlight, he said. Emily giggled softly at the comparison. After warming her legs, he began pressing along her calves and knees, applying firm but careful pressure. "Tell me everything you feel, even if it's small," he reminded her. When his fingers pressed just above her knee, Emily gasped. "It's like something's waking up inside," she said. Her father's head turned sharply toward her. Marcus smiled. "That's the point, talking to your brain." He moved up to her hips and spine, using both thumbs to apply pressure on either side of her lower back. Emily's hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. "It's tingling." Going all the way down, Marcus glanced at Dr. Wells. "You see? That's the signal traveling. The brain is remembering the path." Adrian didn't speak, but his eyes stayed on his daughter's legs, watching for even the smallest movement. After 20 minutes of pressure work, Marcus stepped back. "I think we can try standing today," he said calmly. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Really?" He nodded, "with support, just to see how your body reacts." Dr. Wells took a step forward, instantly alert. "If she falls," Marcus interrupted gently. "She won't. I'll hold her." Marcus moved the wheelchair near a sturdy wooden railing in the yard. He positioned himself in front of her, his hands steady and confident. "Put your hands on my shoulders," he instructed. Emily obeyed, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Slowly, Marcus helped her shift forward, guiding her feet to rest flat on the ground. Her legs trembled immediately, unused to holding her weight. "Breathe," Marcus said softly. "Don't fight the shaking. Let your body adjust." Emily's knees bent slightly, her muscles struggling, but Marcus held her firmly. His voice was calm and encouraging. "You're doing it. You're holding yourself, Doctor." Wells could feel his own pulse racing. He had seen his daughter in physical therapy many times before, but never had she been able to keep her body upright without being strapped into equipment. This was different, unassisted and happening. Right in front of him, Emily's eyes began to shine. "I can feel the ground," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "Good. Feel it. Remember it." They stayed like that for a few seconds, and then Marcus gently lowered her back into the wheelchair. "That's enough for today," he said. Emily's voice was breathless. "I stood." Marcus nodded. "You stood." After the session, Emily wouldn't stop talking about the feeling of her feet pressing into the earth. "It's warm. Not cold like I thought it would be," she said over dinner. Adrian listened quietly, a small smile tugging at his lips. He didn't want to admit it yet, but he was starting to believe. Later that night, while Emily slept, Adrian found himself replaying the scene in his mind. Marcus's steady hands, Emily's trembling legs, and that look of pure joy on her face. He thought about all the years he'd told her maybe one day without believing it himself. Now, for the first time, he felt like one day might actually come. The next afternoon, Marcus returned with something new, a small strip of cloth. "What's that for?" Emily asked. "To help you balance while you stand," he explained. He tied it loosely around her knees, connecting them so they wouldn't drift apart while she tried standing again. They repeated the process, but this time, Emily stayed standing. For almost 10 seconds, her arms clung to Marcus's shoulders. Her legs trembling, but refusing to give out, she laughed. "It feels like I'm floating." Marcus grinned. That's your body learning how to carry you. Dr. Wells was silent for most of the session, but when Marcus left that day, he followed him to the gate. You've done something no one else has done for her, he said quietly. Marcus shook his head. She's doing it herself. I'm just reminding her body what it's made for. That night, Emily wrote in her journal for the first time in months. She didn't write about the hospital or her father's work. She wrote about the feeling of standing, about how the sun felt different on her face when she was upright, how the air seemed to move around her differently. She ended her entry with 5 words that made her heart race. I think I will walk. The morning air was cool and fresh, sunlight spilling over the rooftops into the Wells' backyard. Emily was already awake before her alarm. She had barely slept, not because she was tired, but because her mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment she stood on her feet the day before. That feeling of the ground under her shoes, of her legs trembling but holding, was now burned into her memory. Marcus arrived right on time, as he always did. Carrying his small bundle and the carved walking stick, Emily's eyes immediately went to it. She wanted to hold it again. Marcus handed it to her without saying a word, and she gripped it tightly, as if it gave her extra courage. Dr. Wells was already outside, coffee in hand, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. He was no longer just supervising out of suspicion. He was watching for progress. Marcus began the warm-up like always, rubbing her legs with the heated towels, pressing and stretching each muscle slowly. He spoke little today, his focus deep. Emily noticed and asked, "Why are you so quiet?" He smiled faintly, "Because today is important. I want you to hear your own body." After the warming, Marcus checked her back and hips with his thumbs, pressing on the points that made Emily's legs tingle. "The nerves are awake," he said softly. "Now they just need to remember how to move together." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. "Are we going to try walking?" she asked. Marcus didn't answer directly. "We'll see where your body takes us." He positioned her wheelchair next to the wooden railing again, but this time, instead of facing her, he stood beside her. "Put your hands on the railing," he instructed. Emily obeyed, her hands gripping the wood. Marcus placed one hand on her back and one on her arm. "When I say now, push with your arms and let your legs help, even if it's just a little." "Now," he said firmly. Emily pushed, her arms doing most of the work, but she felt her legs trying to join in. Marcus guided her upward until she was standing again. Her knees shook wildly, but she didn't panic. "Breathe," Marcus reminded her. "Let them get used to it." They stayed like that for a few seconds before Marcus said, "Shift your weight a little to the left." Emily tried, and to her surprise, her right foot slid forward 1/2 inch. She gasped. "Did you see that?" Marcus smiled. "Yes, that's step 1. Her father stepped closer, his hands slightly out, as if ready to catch her. "Emily, don't overdo it," he warned. Marcus nodded in agreement. "One more try, then we rest." Emily took a deep breath, focused, and shifted her weight again. This time her left foot moved forward. Small but clear, she let out a shaky laugh. "I'm walking," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "You're learning to walk." They repeated the small movements. A few more times, right foot forward, left foot forward, until Emily managed 3 tiny steps with Marcus supporting her. By the third, her arms were trembling from gripping the railing, and her legs felt like heavy sandbags. Marcus lowered her gently back into the wheelchair. "That's enough for today," he said. Emily's cheeks were flushed with excitement. "That was more than I've ever done," she said breathlessly. Her father crouched in front of her, his voice quiet but warm. "You did it, Em. You really did it." After Marcus left, Emily couldn't stop talking about the feeling, how strange it was to move forward, how the sun felt different when she was upright, how each tiny step felt like the start of something bigger. She told her father she wanted to practice every day, even without Marcus there. That night, Dr. Wells sat alone in the living room, thinking about everything he had seen. In the past weeks, the tiny foot movement, the standing, and now the steps. It wasn't just progress, it was a miracle in slow motion. And the person making it happen wasn't a doctor, wasn't trained in any medical school, but a boy who had once slept on the streets. The next day, Emily asked if Marcus could come. Twice a day instead of once. Her father hesitated, worried she might tire herself. But Marcus agreed it was a good idea. Shorter sessions, more often. That's how we keep the nerves awake, he explained, over the next few days. Emily's steps grew a little longer, a little steadier. She still needed Marcus's support, and she still tired quickly. But she was moving forward, step by step. Her confidence grew with each session. She began to imagine a day when she would walk across the yard without help, maybe even run one afternoon while she was practicing. The neighbors peeked over the fence. At first, they thought they were seeing things. But when they realized Emily was truly on her feet, moving, they couldn't hide their surprise. Some clapped, others simply stood in shock. Emily blushed but kept going. That evening, after the neighbors had left, Emily told Marcus, "I don't care if people believe it or not. I know it's real." Marcus smiled. "That's all that matters. You believe, your body believes, and that's enough." Her father stood in the doorway, listening, and for the first time, he allowed himself to say the words he had been holding back for years. "Emily, you're going to walk. I can see it now." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I know, Dad," she whispered, gripping the walking stick. "I can feel it." The morning of the big day came without anyone really planning it. The sky was clear, the sun soft and golden, and the air smelled fresh after a light rain the night before. Emily woke up before dawn, sitting up in bed with her heart pounding. For no reason she could explain. She looked at the carved walking stick leaning against her desk and felt an unshakable sense that something important was about to happen. When Marcus arrived, he was carrying the same small bundle and his usual calm smile, but Emily noticed something different in his quiet excitement. Dr. Wells was already in the backyard, waiting. There was no suspicion in his stance anymore. Only the watchful hope of a father who had seen the impossible begin to happen. They started, like always. Marcus warming her legs with the towels, rubbing them in slow circles, pressing the familiar points along her calves and knees. Then he moved to her lower back, his thumbs pressing firmly on the spots that sent that strange tingling down her legs. "The nerves are ready," he said softly. "I can feel it." Emily nodded, gripping the walking stick tightly. "Today, we'll try without the railing," Marcus said. His voice was calm, but Emily's heart raced. Dr. Wells stepped forward. "Immediately, she's not ready." Marcus met his eyes. "She is. I'll be right here." After a moment's pause, Adrian stepped back. Though his hands hovered in the air as if ready to catch her, Marcus stood in front of Emily and held out both hands. "Put your hands here," he said. She placed her hands in his, feeling the warmth and steadiness of his grip. "When I say now, push up. Let your legs help. Trust them." Emily took a deep breath. "Now," Marcus said firmly. Emily pushed, her arms straining, her legs trembling hard, but they held. She was upright, standing in the open air with no railing. Marcus was still holding her hands, but she was bearing more of her own weight than ever before. "Breathe," he reminded her. "Don't fight the shaking. It means the muscles are working." Emily looked down and saw her feet planted firmly on the grass. "I'm standing," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "Yes, you are. Now let's take a step." Her breath caught in her throat, but she nodded, shifting her weight forward. Her right foot moved slow, unsteady, but it moved. Then the left. Dr. Wells' eyes were wide, his lips parted in disbelief. He had seen her move her legs before, but this was walking, It was clumsy, and Marcus was still there for balance. But it was walking. They took one step, then another, and another. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm doing it," she gasped. Marcus nodded. "You're doing it?" They made it across half the yard before Marcus gently lowered her back into the wheelchair. "Enough for today," he said. Emily was breathless, her cheeks glowing with excitement. Dr. Wells walked up and crouched in front of her. "Emily, you just walked." His voice cracked on the last word. Emily laughed through her tears. "I know, Dad, I felt it." Words spread quickly by the next afternoon. A few neighbors gathered quietly at the fence, pretending not to stare. Emily stood again, and with Marcus's help, she took even more steps. This time, her movements were a little steadier. The neighbors clapped softly, some with tears in their eyes. Emily blushed, but kept going. Day after day, her steps grew stronger. Within 2 weeks, she could walk short distances with just the walking stick. Marcus stayed close, but more and more, his hands weren't needed. Each time she crossed the yard, her father watched in awe, still not fully believing what his eyes showed him. One evening, as the sun was setting, Marcus arrived looking more thoughtful than usual. After the session, when Emily was resting, he pulled Dr. Wells aside. "You don't need me anymore," he said quietly. Adrian frowned. "What are you talking about?" Marcus smiled faintly. "She can walk now. She'll get stronger on her own. My job is done." But Adrian shook his head. "No, Marcus, your job isn't done. You've done something no one else could. And I'm not letting you go back to the streets." Marcus hesitated. "I don't want charity." Adrian's voice was firm. "It's not charity. It's family. If you want it." When Emily heard, she was overjoyed. "You have to stay. You're my big brother now," she said. Marcus looked at her and saw the same spark he'd seen. On the first day, the spark that told him she would fight for what she believed in. He agreed to stay, not as a guest, but as part of the Wells family. Months later, Emily walked into the hospital on her own 2 feet for the first time in her life, holding the carved walking stick in one hand and Marcus's hand in the other. The doctors and nurses who had known her since birth stood frozen, watching her move down the hallway. Adrian walked behind them, his chest swelling with pride, and in that moment, Marcus, the homeless boy no one believed, was no longer just a stranger at the hospital gate. He was the boy who gave Emily her first steps, and in return, found a place to finally call home.